I'm pulling this thing out and I'm already finding wires that go to the window that are broken off. And I don't know if one of these was on that patch that we saw that's inside the boot right now. I'll find out in a minute. But I know this brown with blue tracer is window and this white with yellow tracer. Those are both from the window switch. So this is more than likely my problem right here. I'm hoping that's all it is and that we don't have to do anything under the dash or change modules or little computer chips anywhere. I've got this where I can see it now, and I found the broken wires. I found both ends of the wire that they patched. They put a jumper in there on this black wire, and they used crimp-ons. Well, I use crimp-ons too, but I always solder them. I don't know if I can get more room if I take some stuff out from under the dash or not, to more room to work. I might be able to. This might be a little tricky, but I can still put crimp-ons on there and solder and fix that. We got the yellow one and the brown one, and we got both ends of those here. And you guys that just found this video and don't watch my videos, I apologize for being a little slow to speak. I cover a lot of details, but the video would not even be on YouTube if I did not get to the end of this problem. Looks like if I just shove the boot back inside the door and all this extra wire I gathered up by loosening everything up in there, I'll have a lot more room to work with that boot out of my way. I've got all these wires stripped, and I don't like the idea of this this extra little link of wire on this black one being so long, because it's got to be doubled over and folded back. It'll be the next one to break again. So I'm going to take that off and go ahead and patch that the same way I'm doing these other ones. So I've just got to just squeeze these ends here of these terminals. I got one off up here. I'm going to do the other one. Squeeze that with the pliers, and we'll solder that the same way I'm doing the other ones. To keep from cutting too much wire off, I'm going to just smooth the ends out and then kind of shove them together and then solder it like that, and then and that's okay. That'll work just fine because the wires are a little bit short. But what I'm going to do is, after I do that, I'm going to go inside the wiring harness here on the inside. I'm going to peel the tape off, and I'm going to get to the end of those wires, and I'm going to pull them back and get some of that extra, because we've already lost at least ½ an inch, maybe more, of this wire. And I could get that back by putting crimp-ons, splice butt connectors on there, but they're so thick and burly they're going to be a problem inside that boot. So I'm just going to do it this way, and then I'm going to paint some of this this stuff here on there, this liquid tape. I'll paint that on there, and then I will wrap a little piece of tape over it when that's dry. And I'm going to do that on all 3 wires, is what my plan is. Well, I made a mistake here. I didn't have this wire bent and holding itself in position tight enough, and after the solder got on there, the liquid solder just kind of lubricated the ends of the wires, and it's just popped off and flew back out here. So now both wires are soldered and tinned. There's no way to separate them. I have to cut them off and make it about 1 inch shorter. So be sure to make sure when you do something like this that the wire is not going to spring itself back out of there if it can, because even if you have to tie another wire to it somewhere, then hold it in place. I found another piece of 12 gauge wire in my junk, that I'm going to use, and they used a piece of 14 to make that jumper, and it's not a good idea. If you're going to do that, you want to go thicker than what your original wiring is, not thinner. But for the power window, it wouldn't hurt anything anyway. It's not really pulling that much power. But you know, you put smaller wire than what your load is calling for, and the wire is going to get hot, so you want to avoid that. Yeah, you want to do whatever it takes to keep that wire from falling apart while you're soldering it when you are in as tight a spot as I am with no room to work. So I just stuck a piece of tape on this piece of scrap wire, and we'll fix that end of it, and then we'll see where to cut it off at and put some more on it. You also want to, when you're in a tight spot like this, you got to make sure you got enough solder on there. You can't see completely all the way around the back side of it, but you're going to try to make sure you got the back side as much as possible, as well as the front and the middle, because you don't want to just have it soldered a little bit and then have it come apart and break, or just have a weak connection there as far as not very many strands of wire, and that'll be a hot spot, and if it gets hot enough, it'll melt the solder and come apart. Another thing I might want to point out is pull this wire around and follow the other wires. Pull it around and see just how long it needs to be without putting a strain on it. You don't want to double the wire over inside the harness, and you don't want to have one that's shorter than the rest of them, and the rest of them are loose and putting a strain on the short one. So you want to keep them all the same length as close as possible. Otherwise you got to untape the whole harness and just tape everything down at its proper length all the way down again. Before I put this door back together, I forgot to show, I don't think I showed it, that I tapped into these two wires that go to the window motor, and I put jumper cables out here, and I touched the wires on the jumper cables to the battery, and you know, had the jumper cables on the battery and the other end out here, and I touched these. The window works fine. The motor goes up and down just fine both directions, and so that's how I knew it was not the motor. It was not the plug-in that goes to the motor. It was in the wiring someplace. Didn't see anything wrong out here. That's why I went to the other side. Didn't see anything in this boot, but I didn't have the boot out all the way. Well, now I got to put all this back together. I got to patch up these splices and put everything back together. Problem fixed with the driver's door window. I didn't have it plugged in. I had unplugged it to get more room with this harness, and I forgot that I had unplugged it, and so plugged it in. It works. Other side works. Okay, I can put the door back together. Thanks for watching. I have a new problem with my electric windows. I fixed them by fixing the wiring inside here, and then the next day the windows were not working again. But this time both windows were not working. When I bought the truck, this driver's side window worked fine, the passenger didn't. Okay, I found a couple of broken wires in here and another wire that someone else had patched, and so I patched it my way, which I thought was better, and repaired the other two wires, and so that was fixed. But then now the next day the window doesn't work at all, and I have not looked yet for the fuses. I'm not sure where they are. I got to hunt those down and find what fuse and relay and whatever goes to this. But what I did find when I was trying to diagnose the other window is that this blue wire, blue with the black tracer, was the power. That was the power that turned the windows on. Was this wire right here on the window switch. And by the way, this thing comes off so easy. It's just got a hook on this end that hooks under here, and this end has just got a little snap. So you just lift it on the front end here and the whole thing comes right off. You can change your switches or check your wiring right there. Nothing's happening here with the test light. The test light works, and in order to prove that I have a good ground, I got jumper cables outside, and so you know I got a light here, so test light works. But I put a hot wire. I clamped it in the positive side here. Let me get this camera on a tripod. I take the hot wire and I stick it in here with the blue, and then I hit my switches. You'll just have to listen because I got both of my hands busy. I can't move the camera right now. Well, the passenger window is going up and down. I didn't know which switch I was going to hit. Passenger window is working. Now I move to the other switch. You'll probably hear this one. This one goes up and down just fine. So everything, all my wiring is fixed. The only thing that's not fixed right now is something happened to my power coming to this blue wire here, and I got to go under the dash and try to find that. And it's not beyond me to put a hot wire in there from under the dash somewhere to get through the problem for the time being, but I do want it fixed right, and I do want to know where that fuse is, so I'm going to hunt that down. Okay, looking at the fuse box under the dash, according to the owner's manual, this one right here is supposed to be the breaker for that, but I have a problem. There's nothing happening. I need two hands to test this good because this point on this test light's too big, so I have to stick a little tiny thing in there. I need two hands to hold that in there and put the test light on it. But there's nothing happening in there. There's no hot going to this, so it looks like I got to take the fuse box out and look at the wiring in the back side of it. But this other stuff is working. On this fuse here, I don't know what it goes to, but it's working. It's a big one, it's a breaker, and it's 60 amps. So, but there's nothing in here at all on this one. Now what I might be able to do is put a hot wire on this and see if it makes the windows go up and down. This hot wire that I got on the jumper cables, I can stick that in one of these holes. Should make that work. I'm going to try that. Well, that is the right breaker. The top terminal on it, when I put a hot wire on that, the windows work. When I put it on the bottom one, the windows don't work. But I heard a little buzzing, a little humming somewhere in the system, I don't know where. So the hot wire that goes to this is going to be on the bottom or towards the middle of the fuse box. So I got to go on the back side and see if I can find out why there's no hot wire going to this terminal. I got to take the fuse box out. I got my windows fixed, but I did something wrong in order to get it done, and so I did not record what I was doing because it was trial and error. And gosh, it's been nearly 40 years since I was a full-time car mechanic, and these computerized cars are completely different than what I was working on when I was a mechanic. So not to say I don't know how to do anything on them, but I am confused, and everything is controlled by computers. The windows are not just direct wiring. Some of it is, but it all goes through a computer, a computerized fuse box with circuit boards and modules and stuff built into it, and all this stuff is controlled by that. Well, I had to bypass that because the fuse box under here in this Ford 350, fuse box is in there. I'd take that down, and the radio would not work and the windows would not work, and so I could have hot wired them directly and made them work. When I put a hot wire on the window switch, the windows would work and the radio would work. And see how I got my hot wire? I got a pair of jumper cables out on the battery. They're just conveniently hanging here as test leads for hot and ground. And so the windows worked, the radio worked when I put that hot wire inside the switch. So I took the fuse box down. I found a wire, a heavy gauge wire. I wanted a heavy gauge wire because I didn't want anything small that was not going to be fused properly. So I found the heavy gauge wire, and there's about a 10 gauge wire, and it turns on with the accessories, and it turns off on the on position, and it turns back on again on the on position. And so I tapped into that wire, and I found the same hot wire that goes to my switches here, and in this case it's a blue wire with a, forgot what color tracer it is, let me look at it and see. It's blue with a black tracer. It's that wire right there. That's the one that, that's the hot wire. I can either put a hot wire on it out here, but I found that same wire under the dash behind the fuse box, and I linked that with a fused link. I made up a link with a breaker in it, a 30 amp breaker in it, and so it goes to the wire that comes out here, and then it goes to that accessory. That one wire I found, that one heavy wire, and when I was testing with a test light, I'm only looking at the heavy wires, nothing small, just the biggest wires. And so I found one that works on accessories and on the on position, and it shuts off on the off position. So that got everything working. I think my key is on accessories right now, and windows are working, both sides. And the radio's working. Somebody's firing up a Harley down the street. The radio's working. So, alright, got it fixed for the moment. But the problem is inside the circuitry of the fuse box. That could be getting into hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and I really don't know 100% for sure what's going on with that, but that is... that's how I fixed it. I bypassed that circuitry inside the fuse box and just tapped in directly to a heavy gauge accessory wire.